Super. Good afternoon. This is the ROAR webinar series. I'm Josefina Bonilla, and with us is Dr. Vanessa Calderon Rosado.
Hi, Josefina. Thank you for having me. Very exciting.
Thank you for being with us. You are you've been noted as one of the most powerful women in Boston. You're someone that people really look up to. You're an inspiration to so many women, including myself, as a fellow Puerto Rican, as a woman of courage, as someone that really has gone beyond barriers. And the thing I love about you is that you're so focused on community and the betterment of the community. So kudos on all those things.
Oh, thank you so much, Fina. It's definitely my life's work and passion and purpose. So I'm delighted to be here with you today to see you and to talk a little bit about my own journey and also how that translates into community work and building partnerships, especially at this time in history in which we are facing so many challenges, unprecedented challenges, things that we never probably thought even that could happen. So this is an important time. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad. So we're going to get right to it. I like getting right to it. We have 30 minutes together. I want to talk about your leadership style. And with that leadership style, I want to talk about how that has shifted during the pandemic, if it has. We'll leave with that.
Yeah, actually, I would say in terms of my leadership style, it's very defined by three main elements: purpose, determination, and collaboration. I think those things really drive the way I work, I interact, and I, motivate and work with teams. So those three things I think have been even more important now since the shutdown in March, when we started facing the growing numbers of COVID-19 cases across the country, and particularly in Boston and Massachusetts. I find that in terms of purpose, I think I have a very strong ethos and sense of purpose, and that is critical for me, and that grounds me on the work that I do and my mission and my North Star. With everything that has happened since the pandemic started, that has served not only as a way to be more resilient, but really to drive change and to raise the challenges and issues to the forefront of the conversation, of the inequities, of the disparities, of the issues that our communities, particularly Black and Latino communities, are facing. So I think, if anything, it has deepened more. And the same with determination. I'm a very driven person. I like to see results. I like to be able to prove myself and get the work done. And that has helped me to, during the pandemic, to really think, okay, what is it? How do we get this done? And how do we continue to bring this message home with elected officials, with communities, with partners, with funders? Because the philanthropic community has also changed, and part of it is really better understanding how they need to invest in communities in a different way. And lastly, collaboration. No one can do anything alone. No one can solve, especially such a monumental challenge in front of us alone. So I think that working with the teams, listen from the team. We pivoted to obviously remote work when we shut down, but we started meeting 3 times a week as a team. And that sense of collaboration always energizes me to hear the different perspectives around the table, the Zoom table, and also see the creative process when you have these diverse perspectives and ideas bouncing around. It's fantastic to see how creative we become in solving the challenges and serving the community remotely. So,
I think to have such a well-defined sense of purpose, you said purpose, determination, collaboration. And I know personally from my experience with you, those are all things that I can see. But in order to hone in on those particular skills, right? There must have been lessons learned that help you move in that direction, right? So can you talk about maybe some early lessons that you learned that kind of shifted the way you've become?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that an early lesson in my career was very early in my career when I was a high school student. My first job was working with in my pediatrician's office, and I started working there as um,
This person signed in with your information, so I'm going to remove them.
okay,
Sorry. There you go.
thank you. Um, so one of the things that I learned, I started working there part-time as a receptionist, and shortly after I was promoted twice to have more responsibility as a teenager, as a high school student. And I think that that first experience showed me a number of things, from work ethics to attention to details, to really feeling empowered and seeing how your work can make a difference in someone's lives, right? So one of my roles was taking care of the kids, the sick kids and babies when they were coming, taking their temperature, measuring them, weighing them to prepare the record for the doctor when they were going to be seen by him. And that level of working, consoling the kids, helping the parents, doing that work really was an amazing opportunity for me to reassure myself and my capabilities at that early stage in my life on what purpose, determination, and collaboration, because I had to learn a lot. I mean, I was 16 years old.
And I think it's interesting because when you have that type of work with so much responsibility early on, it's very different than other types of jobs. I too, when my first job was at Southern Jamaica Plain Health Center, and I did billing, and I had to be there. There was no calling out sick because my role was important, and as yours was, and that I can see how that created a sense of purpose, a sense of responsibility, and that does change you in a way because you no longer. The other thing it did for me, and I wonder if it did it for you as well, is I lived in a bubble of my Puerto Ricanness until I started working externally. And then all of a sudden, the world became a little different for me. I experienced different people. And the needs of so many were a big thing for me. I didn't really recognize that anybody had the same needs or different than my own up until that point.
I agree. I mean, I grew up in Puerto Rico, and this first job was in San Juan, in Puerto Rico, very close by where I lived in Rio Piedras. Actually, it was my pediatrician's office. So I worked for him when I was in high school, but it definitely helped me see the word in a different sense. You know, I come from a middle class family, and we weren't rich or wealthy, but I had everything that I needed as a teenager. So a job was not necessarily something that it was, like for many of our young people today, the young people that Eva works with, is a necessity, right? For me, it wasn't as much as a necessity, but a sense of, I wanted to do something productive, and really opened my eyes to so much. I learned so much because I, at some point, handled billing, for help with the billing in his office through health insurance. And so it really helped me understand the breadth of the workplace, from administrative clerical to really more human, the human side of things. So it was a fantastic entry level into the workplace. Of course, I didn't continue that job for some time. I thought I was going to be a pediatrician because I really loved it. But clearly, it was a very important foundation for the work that I've done. after that. And I have to say that, and maybe I'm dating myself now, but it was minimum wage. And even when I got promoted, I didn't get promoted with salary, just with responsibilities, which I didn't mind because I was enjoying and learning a lot. But at the time, minimum wage was like $2.75 an hour. So you can, it was a long time ago. But it just really showed me that doesn't matter, right? How much money you're making, but the purpose and the learning that you can derive and the kind of change that you can drive in any job is really important.
You know, you mentioned your North Star, and it's so interesting how those type of jobs direct you in that way, because many of those jobs you're not in it for the money, as you said.
Right. It was definitely not because of that.
You know, I felt when I first started at Southern Jamaica Plain that I should have been paying them, because I used to love going to work. I used to love going to work. It was a great part of my day. So
Mm-hmm.
I can see the connection. But let's talk about, you know, I interviewed a number of leaders like yourself, and I've often been interested in the type of rituals, the habits that they form, because those type of habits help you become successful. What are some of your habits and rituals?
Uh, an important habit for me is to work out first thing in the morning. Because if I don't do it first thing in the morning, I won't do it, because then the day gets busy and then I get tired or distracted with everything that I have on my plate, my to-do list. So working out first thing in the morning helps me start my day. It keeps me balanced, focused, ready to tackle the day, happy, energized, motivated. So that's an important ritual for me. And a habit that I'm glad that I have developed. It took me some time to develop, waking up and working out, but I'm happy I was able to develop this habit. Another ritual that is very important to me and ground me is having meals with my family, and particularly on Sunday mornings, because on Sundays I go all out. I pour my heart into it, and I make every Sunday a brunch-like feast. And then so preparing that meal and sitting around the table with my family, putting some jazz music in the background, talking about the topic of the day. It's just really a wonderful ritual. It kind of is beautifully bonding ritual for me and my family. It's fun. So I think those two things definitely help me. But also, there's so many other things that help me stay focused. Reading. I love reading. And in the last couple of years, I've been reading a lot of books around important women, inspirational women, women who have accomplished many things, who have succeeded sometimes in the worst of cases. And that is really motivating, because sometimes when, the going gets tough, really finding inspiration among others is really important.
So let's segue into that. Can you define what success looks like for you?
Purely success is defined in very personal ways, right? Everyone would have a different definition of what success looks like for them. For me, I think it's multifaceted. I think that first and foremost, being able to provide for my family, particularly my children, to provide them with the opportunities for growth and development so they can grow into engaged, civic-minded, honest, responsible, good men is important for me. And for me, it's definitely a measure of success. I also, especially because of my work and my purpose, my mission, pushing for changes that will increase racial, social, and economic equity in our communities. I think that's a way also for me to measure success. And maybe lastly, and perhaps more menial but equally important, and is if I can lock 6.5 hours of sleep a day, that's definitely success for me. Big time.
Yeah, that I would have to say in the last few years that has been more elusive unicorn than I care to admit.
Yeah, and it's you know, it was never that in my life before, but it is for many reasons, right? And so if I can have 6.5 hours, 7 hours,
How about 8? Wouldn't that be
oh,
the
8 would be like utopia.
exactly?
I'll take 6.5 or 7.
Now, you talked about reading a lot about inspirational women. Can you name some women that you're inspired by or you aspire to be like?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Mm.
As a fellow Puerto Rican, her life story of rising through the challenges to get to the highest court in this country is such a source of inspiration. And on top of that, I've had the honor to meet her twice, and every one of those times, I've come away with this sense of inspiration, motivation, because she's so humble, wise, funny, um, down to earth, warm, and she has such a deep sense of and commitment to family and community that I just align so much with her in that sense that she's definitely a hero for me. And I really truly admire her. And especially in these unprecedented times and with everything that's going on with the recent passing of Justice Ginsburg, I oftentimes find myself thinking about Justice Sotomayor a lot. So she's definitely one. Justice Ginsburg is another one. Actually, I read a book about her when we shut down in March for the pandemic. I had this book about her life sitting on my shelf, and I pulled it out and read it for the first time. And so many others, former First Lady Michelle Obama. There's so many women doing so important work that.
I find that women that inspire me or I aspire to be like, it shifts all the time depending on where I am in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so right now, as I work towards getting a terminal degree, I am inspired by women that have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is so challenging, and it has been for me, especially now with this online type of education, because I find I'm more needy than I would be normally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I need more, and books, right? When you're reading online, I still need the tactical. I mean, I need to touch it, and I need to be able to have conversations. So I find that I get inspired based on where I am in my life.
I agree with that. I think that obviously, depending on what challenges you're facing, you may find inspiration in different sources, right? So I think that is very true. And to advice for you as you're going through this and going through these challenges, you may be a trailblazer. So write it down, and so other women can be inspired by you. You know, adult women going through a terminal degree in this kind of two-dimensional world of Zoom and video calls. I think that is a new challenge for most of us, because before we, as social beings, we depend so much into that social face-to-face personal interaction that I think that whatever if you don't find enough people that could inspire you, write it down so you will inspire the next generation of women that will go through that.
But let's talk about your work at EVA. And your work really is surrounded by community. It impacts community. It is such a value added to communities, all communities, but particularly the Hispanic and Latino community in Massachusetts. Can you talk a little bit? We have about 8 or so minutes, so let's spend a quality time there.
Absolutely, thank you. So yeah, Eva is such a source of inspiration for so many. Definitely for me, I'm very proud of being working there and with a wonderful team of people and supported by a great board. But Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción, or IBA, IBA, is a nonprofit community development corporation that empowers individuals and families through sustainable, affordable housing, through education. And
so important in Boston, so important.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, IBA was created in 1968 by a group of Puerto Rican activists, hence the name Boricuas, right? Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción, or Puerto Rican Tenants in Action. This group of Puerto Rican activists organized and mobilized to stop the city's bulldozers from displacing them. At the time in the South End, where we are located, there were about 2,000 Puerto Ricans, individuals living and working in the neighborhood and in the city. So they stopped the bulldozers and they decided that they were going to create a plan to revitalize the neighborhood, to develop affordable housing and programs and services for the community. And they did. So for fellow Puerto Ricans like you and I, this is such an important story for our city, because when you think about it, these Puerto Rican activists, many of them only had a 3rd grade or 5th grade education, because they had come from the island to work in factories, to work in the fields. So they came, and with lower levels of educations and a very working class community, they organized and they created IBA, which today is the largest Latino-led nonprofit organization in Eastern Massachusetts. So it's an amazing, it's a great institution. And we today, if we fast forward to the day, we continue to create affordable housing. We continue to preserve affordable housing for low-income families. We continue to provide programs and education programs and services for our community. And most importantly, which many community development corporations don't do, is that in addition to all that holistic approach to community development, we do arts and we promote and preserve Latino arts and promote Latino artists, because from the beginning, our founders, those activists, thought that the arts were not only a way to celebrate our heritage, our culture, our roots, our history, but also a wonderful tool to build community and community power. So we have continued that tradition in not only celebrating our culture and using that to build cross-cultural bridges, but also to continue to build community, to continue to build people together around the issues and the challenges that we face. So they were extremely visionary, those Puerto Rican activists.
That was not easy. That was not easy.
It was not easy. And it was at a moment of turmoil in the city in the late 60s, early 70s, when not only in the city of Boston, but across the nation, but certainly in the city of Boston, where there were so many things happening around the civil rights movement, about the desegregation of the school system. There was so much turmoil, and they persevered and they achieved the goal. So we're very proud to continue that work today, to continue to support families. We, as you said, serve primarily Puerto Rican and Latino families, but we serve low-income families from all walks of life, both in our housing programs and in all of our other programs.
Well, what I find interesting about IBA, there's 2 things that resonate for me. One is the whole holistic approach to the whole family, because you have programs that touch each one of them. You have housing for the elderly. You have programs for preschoolers and families. You have training and development. I mean, you're really looking at holistically what a whole family unit needs in order to be successful.
That is so true. And Josefina, with the pandemic, that work has become even more important because families have faced so many challenges. And one of the things that we were able to pivot really quickly into when we shut down was to really contact our families, both who live in our residences, in our housing units, and also who we serve through the other programs to understand their needs around food access. Were they able to, now that things have shut down, food access was an important piece. Health, the health of the family, including COVID-19, technology, do they have access to technology or not, and the finances, the economic stability of the family. Have they lost their job? Do they need help with unemployment? Do they need help with rent assistance? What do they need? We were very, very focused on making sure that families remain stable through the pandemic. And I think those efforts have paid out tremendously because we have 667 units of housing in our portfolio. And we have only had 9 cases, positive cases of COVID-19 in a substantial portfolio. So I think all that effort of really supporting the families, not just on one area, but really a wraparound of what are the needs. Can we provide that need? Can we help that family, or can we refer them to another organization or government entity to help them with that? That was a very important piece of the work that we did when we closed down with COVID-19 back in March. And we continue to do that.
The other interesting thing that I find is some of the units that, or the buildings that EBA manages or owns are in areas that I know a lot of investors have wanted to go in and tear down. So there's properties in the south end of Boston that is the area where many people want to live.
Yeah.
Yet you find families that have been able to find homes there because EBA has created a safe space for them.
Correctly. The South End is a wonderful neighborhood with wonderful, great resources and opportunities, but it's highly gentrified. And
Yes.
unfortunately, many of those resources and opportunities are not necessarily accessible to our families. So EBA really has become this anchor in the community to support low-income families in such great neighborhood. And in terms of investors, you would not believe me when I say that I get regularly emails and phone calls of investors at a national level looking to buy our properties. And obviously, that's not our mission. We're very grounded in continuing that legacy that our founders created back in 1968.
I think your people are trying to join our conversation, so I'm going to kick them out.
I really have my link, I think.
Yes, yes. Well, listen, Vanessa, it was so great speaking with you. I think the work that you're doing is admirable. It's so needed, and it really impacts so many of us in Massachusetts. So I applaud you for all your work.
Thank you so much, Josefina, and thank you for the opportunity to chat about these very important topics, and about my own journey. Very much appreciated. And thank you for all you do too, for elevating leaders and leaders of color to really have a platform to talk about their work.
Thank you, thank you. And again, folks, save the date for the Roar Virtual 2.0, October 15th. It's on our website, Right Media. Vanessa, do you mind just giving folks your website so if they want to go in, maybe donate, maybe see what they can do?
Absolutely, yeah, especially donate in this time of COVID. Yeah, no, I'm not joking. With COVID-19, this is such a critical time, and we need all hands on deck in supporting our families. So you can visit EBA's website at ibaboston.org, ibaboston.org. And even if it's to learn about the wider array of programs, to read our blogs, there's so much information there on COVID-19 and so many other things that I hope you will find it helpful.
Beautiful. ibaboston.org.
Correct.
Okay, beautiful. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, Nina. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.